Welcome, boys and girls, to Hot Tea and MTG. It's 5:37 in the morning, and we're going to talk some Magic the Gathering because that's how I like to start my day. So this time we're going to go all the way back to 4th edition. Here's my question: do you remember what your first favorite card is? The first card that you looked at and was like, "That is awesome." For me, it was the Shivan Dragon. I don't know how you can see that. When I first got into Magic the Gathering, my older brother and I bought 4th edition sets, 4th edition 60 card booster boxes. Not booster boxes, but booster packages, 60 cards. So they weren't pre-made decks. It was just 60 random cards of the 5 colors mashed into one. We brought those boxes home and we opened them and we played the most unbalanced games of Magic the Gathering that to date I have ever played. It was a lot of fun. Now, the Shivan Dragon was my first favorite card. It was my introduction to the flying ability. It was a 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer. It was the first card that ever won me games from a single card. The first few times this card came out, there was nothing that my older brother could do. The game was over in my favor. It didn't last, because there's a lot of ways, even back then, that you could deal with a single monster. Fissure was our particular host card of choice. I also remember my Shivan Dragon being the target of many counter spells, which is another card you don't see anymore. But yeah, it was pretty awesome, and I was pretty happy to find out that getting back into Magic the Gathering, it's still a mainstay of the core series. I have one for my I have an M19 Shivan Dragon, only one, but I have one in my standard legal deck that I'm building. But the artwork on the newer versions is not the same. There was a change in the artwork at some point. So the old artwork, great big dragon facing downward on the viewer, right, with his foot out like it's gonna stamp out the viewer. It's very menacing. Very menacing and very colorful. I clearly remember the bright yellow belly of the dragon. That's something that sticks out to me. In the newer versions, I guess it's a little bit more photorealistic. I don't know why everything has to be photorealistic. In my opinion, I think that's a big negative with Magic the Gathering artwork. It looks a little bit more like a praying mantis in my opinion. It's still a cool looking card, and it's still a 5/5 flyer with fire breathing, but the old artwork is definitely way better. So let's talk about that ability for a second. So if you can pay 1 red and you can get 1 power, and you do that as many times as you need to within the turn, there was a card called Fire Breathing which did this. So I think there was at some point, my opinion is they must have been thinking about renaming this ability to Fire Breathing. It would not be the first time that they did something like that in Magic the Gathering. If you think back to the days of Sarah Angel was printed before the term vigilance was ever being used. So back in those days, even back in 4th edition when Sarah Angel popped up, she would say, attacking does not cause Sarah Angel to tap. They used to just write it out. They didn't have the word vigilance. I suspect something like that was probably being proposed for this fire breathing technique, but I could be wrong about that. Who knows? The last thing I want to mention about the Shivan Dragon was the way I lost my card. In those days, we didn't have a singles market. We didn't have TCG Player where you could just any card you wanted was on the auction block. There were some singles under glass at the game store, but I don't remember that ever really being a viable option, at least not for me as a kid. If we had the money for singles, especially for like a high dollar single, we were going to get more packs. Especially since we had, I remember when Homelands came out, Homelands was 95 cents for a pack of cards. It was a reduced amount. Like I think it only had 9 cards in it, but it was 90 cents or 95 cents, less than $1. Even with tax in the state of Maryland, $1 would have gotten you a pack of cards in those days. So we bought a lot of Homelands for that reason. But I traded away my Shivan Dragon, and I sorely missed it. I never liked trading. Every time I traded, I always remember losing out. All the cards I traded away became super expensive, with the exception of the Shivan Dragon. I traded away several Force of Wills, which is something I keep bringing up now, and I'm glad that we have the singles market, so I don't need to do that anymore. That's how I was able to rebuy this card. I'm also glad that a lot of the cards I was attached to back in those days are not the expensive cards. When we were playing 4th edition, the super expensive sets had already come and gone. They were the stuff of legends. We knew that there was a card called the Black Lotus that was, if you could believe it, $600 for one Magic card back in the days when the Black Lotus was only $600. So that's the Shivan Dragon, and a quick walk down memory lane back to 4th edition and the origins of Magic the Gathering for me. I'm interested to hear what your first favorite cards were, especially if you started after 4th edition. It's like being reunited with an old friend. It really is. And it's the only Magic card that I own not to play. That's Hot Tea and MTG for today, boys and girls. Thanks for joining me. I have a couple of giveaways I'm working on for the Patreon subscribers, because if you're going to subscribe on Patreon, you might as well be up for a giveaway, right? So more on that soon enough. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you guys in the next one.